everyone, welcome back to ZTalks. I want to wish you a happy new year and I hope that you had a very happy holidays. And you might be coming back into the podcast being like, whoa, I couldn't even find this podcast because we have a brand new logo. As I said last episode before the holidays commence, that we would be coming back in season 2 with a fresh new feel. And as you can see, the colors, the podcast have changed. We have a new logo, we're sharper now, and you should be expecting some new stuff. So make sure to stay tuned for season 2. And some of you might have already guessed some of the new stuff because a lot of you might be watching, yes, I said watching, on YouTube. Because we are now not only on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we now have a YouTube channel. And if you want to have a visual component with your podcast, make sure to head over to the new channel, ZTalks on YouTube, where you can find the same episode that you're listening to right now, but with a little razzle dazzle, a little visual. But besides the fresh new feel and the exciting new things that will be coming from the podcast on our social media platforms, we still have our core component, which is to talk about some history, some classic literature, and today is no exception. So without further ado, we're going to dive right in. And as you might have guessed by the whole promo of this episode, we are going to be talking about Anna Karenina. Now, some of you might know this novel, some of you might not, but for those of you who don't, just know that this is supposed to be one of the greatest pieces of literature ever put out from Russia. Hey, maybe ever put out ever. It's supposed to be the novel, one of the greatest pieces of literature, one of the greatest love stories ever written, ever. So, without further ado, let's get into Anna Karenina. So let's start off with the cast list. And when I say cast list, I literally mean cast list because one thing about this book is that it has loads and loads of characters. And it would really help if you got the Paper Mill Classics version. That's the version that I used to read this book because in this version it has a literal cast list of all the important characters that are mentioned in each major section of the book, which really helped me keep track because sometimes one person is called multiple things, and the cast list in this version also puts their nicknames as well, which is super helpful. So get that version of the book. But for the episode today, I will be laying out some of the major characters so you could go into reading this novel if you so choose, knowing who to really look out for and who's important and who to really keep your eye on, who's the big players. And obviously, one of the first people that we're going to talk about is the woman who the book is named after, Anna Karenina. Now, this book takes place in 19th century Russia. Picture ourselves in the upper echelons of society. We are literally wining and dining, super rich, literally living the high life. In this context, in this air of high society, Anna is smack dab in the middle of everything. One thing you need to know about her is that she is a very complex character. She's in a situation, and when I mean situation, I mean she's a young character. She's a beautiful woman, and she is unfortunately trapped in a marriage with a man that is much older than her because it was a marriage of convenience. Not even convenience, it was a marriage that needed to happen because obviously at this period in time, you know, the 19th century, there wasn't really much choice for women other than to get married. So she had no choice. So she's trapped in this marriage with this man much older than her. She doesn't really love him at all, but she loves the son that they had together. He's literally the apple of her eye and the soul of her being. And her, at this point in time, being trapped, She finds solace through the relationship with her son, but she also knows that she is at the peak of her youth, the peak of her beauty, her vitality, and she feels and she's very aware of the fact that everyone is drawn towards her. Literally, women, men, everyone is drawn towards her aura. They literally describe it in the book as people being drunk off of her air, because she has a certain air about her that makes people just want to be around her. And one person is specifically who wants to be around her all of the time is Vronsky. We're gonna talk about Vronsky, because one thing about Vronsky, he can't leave this woman alone. So in comes our second character, Vronsky. He is a young army officer living the bachelor life, and he is also drawn into Anna's aura. And because Anna never really experienced love in her marriage, she not really looks for it outside of her marriage, but she finds it outside of her marriage within Vronsky. And it's not something that initially she was really looking for. She kind of happened to be like, oh, there is such a thing as love, because I never really experienced it in the marriage I was in, and she never thought it was possible for her or that she could allow herself to do it, but she maybe shouldn't have, because she was married, until she met Vronsky. And Vronsky, I'm not gonna lie to you, I did not like his character at all. You guys should read this book for yourselves to really make that judgment. I've heard some people say that they like Vronsky. I don't understand why. But because he is a bachelor, he has no cares in the world, and love isn't a priority for him. He never really thought about love. He never gave much thought to it. He's literally a 19th century player. He's out here playing with women. He's here for a good time, definitely not a long time. And to me, he's a bit of a narcissist. But we are led to believe that he is pushing to change his ways since he met Anna. He's a changed man, apparently. I personally don't think so, but you should read the book and come with your own opinions. Come back in the comments and let me know if you like Vronsky. Personally, I do not. But the main focus of this book is the love affair between Anna and Vronsky, and how they are so drawn to each other that we almost forget everything else around them, specifically Anna's husband, Karen. He is so essential to the plot because he is the man that stands between their forbidden love. Because obviously, in the 19th century, adultery, especially for women, because women don't really have rights at this point, in the 19th century, that's something really essential to keep in mind. It is very much frowned upon, especially for Anna, because she is a woman. So Karen, he essentially stands between him, which is his right, because Anna and Karen are married. And in the book, Karen, his character, it's interesting. He basically stands in stark contrast to everything that Vronsky is. He is a much older man than Karen. Vronsky, by the way, is described to be younger than Anna in the book, so Karen is much, much older than Vronsky. He is very rational, a very pious, you can say. He's a very pious man, very moral abiding. He has a set of moral codes that he always abides by, and he's described as very stiff and strict, and he is almost viewed to be condescending and cold by Anna. She doesn't feel much love emanating from him towards her and their son. She kind of feels isolated from him, which is why she looks for love in other places. And what's interesting about Karen is that he's more worried about the fact that Anna is being seen cheating than actually cheating, because he has a very high position in government, which he does not want to jeopardize. His main focus is his career, And anything to jeopardize that, like a scandal, his wife, he's like, you guys need to stop letting people see you do this. I would love if you stopped doing it altogether, but if you can't, just do it behind closed doors and don't bring shame upon our family. Not even our family, but specifically me, because you will jeopardize my career and more than my career, but my standing in society and my moral standing, which is interesting because his career, his character is so concerned with perception, which is almost the complete opposite of Vronsky because he's described as being carefree and he not barely cares, but almost barely cares. And those three are trapped in a love triangle, Anna, Karen, and Vronsky. And they are the main characters, the main plot of the book. But there are so many characters and plots going on outside of them. And one that I particularly loved, my favorite actually, this is honestly, I will not lie, the love triangle between Anna, Karen, and Vronsky, at some points I couldn't even care what they were doing. I was like, I could care less. I am actually more concerned with the true love story, which is what kept me going throughout this book. Levin and Kitty. Levin and Kitty, they were the main reason I finished this book. The love triangle, I was like, meh, okay. Good, but not the main T. Levin and Kitty, their love story represents true love, and I hope by the end of this explanation, you also agree that they should have been the main plot. So first we have Kitty. She is young, rich, just a girl living her best life, and she is initially in love. But not with Levin, but unfortunately in love with Vronsky, which is a huge mistake because Vronsky, as we explained before, is a playboy. So Kitty was putting all of her eggs in one basket, and at this time, at this point in history, courting was taken very seriously. So her being in a courting stage with Vronsky, Kitty was having her mind in a place for marriage. Vronsky, that was not his ballgame. He was like, I'm just here for a good time, not a long time, so Kitty, I could care less about your feelings. And that is exactly what happened. Kitty ended up getting her heart broken. And it was for the better because she ended up with my personal favorite character, Levin. Levin is my all-time favorite character in this book. I know that is a controversial thing to say, and it might seem like he will not be my favorite character after I explain some further points about this book, but trust me, he is. Because his character is so close to life, he's not caught up in the limelight, in the whole throes of high society. Everyone else in this book is in high society. They are there for the drama. He's just a man trying to figure out life. He's a landowner. He loves farming, and he just wants a wife to build his family, which is so wholesome. We see him throughout this entire book on a road of self-discovery. He is literally the representation of human existence and life because he spends the entire book questioning love, faith, family, and questions that every human on this earth finds themselves asking at a certain point in their lives. And we go through his journey on trying to figure out who he is and what his place is in the world. It is honestly beautiful because we see him also understand himself in relation to Kitty and his love for her, and how he rediscovers himself also through their union, which is a beautiful thing. And Kitty also discovers herself as well, because before she was just a woman in high society and she didn't have much substance to her character. But through being with Levin and seeing the farm life, and how things operate outside of high society and money, she develops a character which is so rich, and I come to love her as one of my favorite female characters in the book as well. Now, behind this rich plot, we have even richer historical context. Now, this book was written by one of the greatest authors in Russian literature and arguably of all time, Leo Tolstoy. And he wrote this book between 1873 and 1877. And the book is set in the exact time period that he is writing in at that time, 1870s Imperial Russia. Now, this is a charged time in Russian history because right before the 1870s, we have the 1860s. And in 1861, Alexander the Second abolished serfdom, which completely shakes and breaks down the social structures that are upholding Russia as people know it. And this is clearly reflected in the book. It is honestly one of the main themes in the book as well, which is social structure and how it is constantly changing in the book at that time, and it's so uncertain. This is most clearly seen through Levin's character, because I'll just preface Levin's character by saying that he is honestly the direct voice for the author Tolstoy, which is one of the reasons why when you ask people who their favorite character is in the book after they've read it, they will most likely not say Levin, because Tolstoy uses Levin as basically his mouthpiece in the book to voice his opinions on Russia at that time in the 1870s. And he is a perfect character to talk about it because Levin, as I said, is a landowner. And after serfdom being abolished, there were all these questions around peasants having rights to the land and how they would be enfranchised financially. And we see Levin questioning this in the book as he is working the land, and he questions his relations to his workers and if he should enfranchise them and give them financial rights. And I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of parts in this book that could have been taken out but was put in because it was basically an opinion piece by Tolstoy, because Levin goes on a lot of, I wouldn't say ramblings, more like monologues. There would be pages on pages on pages, or even chapters of just ramblings on enfranchisement of peasants and what their place was or is in the social structure of Russia after serfdom is abolished, and just monologues on agriculture and monologues on social rights. And those are the times in the book where you can clearly tell that it's not Levin, but it's Tolstoy speaking. And it can get a bit lengthy because the book in the paper mill classic version is around 800 pages, and I would say around 100 of them are just monologues of this topic, which at some points can get very tiring. So if you are going to read this book, please prepare yourself for that. That was one of the parts of the book that I struggled with a lot and I didn't particularly like. I would say it was the part I liked the least about this book. But I would say if you're into that, it definitely reflects what people were thinking at that point in time. Specifically, the fact that a lot of people were scared what enfranchising peasants to having more rights to the land would do, specifically Tolstoy, because he believed in giving workers more rights, but he feared revolution and drastic change. So that part of the book was enlightening to just have a window into the author's minds and to some of people's views at that time, but it was a bit lengthy and sometimes not entirely needed. But besides the historical context and the background of peasant rights and serfdom, we also have a main theme of religion. It's a huge point in the book, and it's portrayed mainly through the characters of Levin and Karen. Levin, because he's as I said, on this huge journey of self discovery. And one of the things that he's asking himself on this journey is the meaning of life, because he starts off the book as an atheist, but through his falling in love with Kitty, he questions his position on faith, because Kitty is a big proponent of religion, and he kind of questions where he stands with it and what life means in the face of death. And we just go through him questioning religion and really trying to commune or understand God on his walk of self-discovery, which is a beautiful thing, because he is basically stumbling through life and trying to understand, which is something that every one of us is trying to do. And he does it with such humility and not presumption, which is kind of one of the reasons that I really love Levin. And aside from Levin, we also get Karen, and his expression of, or the expression of religion through Karen's character in the book is the polar opposite of Levin, because Karen uses religion as a justification for his moral high ground, and he uses it as kind of a refuge of the shame that he's faced with in society after Anna chooses to carry on her affair with Vronsky, and people start noticing it and openly seeing them together. And Karen is faced with a lot of shame, so he kind of uses religion as a shield and a way to place himself above people and to just save face in society, which is the polar opposite of the reasons why Levin is trying to seek religion. So we get kind of a good seeking faith and a bad seeking faith representation in the book, which is interesting. And it's a main theme that weaves itself through these two characters and kind of interacts with other characters in the book, such as Anna and Kitty. So it's in the background, but it's a theme that is constantly there. Now let's talk about more of the plot. So we have all of these characters, all of these themes, all of this historical context, and the book is rich. And it's all in the background, but in the foreground, we always have to remember that the main plot is Anna and Vronsky and their love affair. All of this other stuff is happening really intensely around them, which kind of adds to the feeling of suffocation that Anna is feeling through being with Vronsky, because Anna steps out on her marriage with Karen, and she's essentially trapped in her love affair with Vronsky because, for multiple reasons throughout the book, which I won't give because I don't want to spoil, she doesn't divorce Karen, so legally she's still bound to Karen. And she's not allowed to see her kid, which is the apple of her eye. So she's chasing love through her affair with Vronsky. But the more she chases it, the more she becomes trapped, because the further she is pushed away from her child and the further she's pushed away from society. Because remember, she's a woman in 1870s Russia. So people are completely icing her out of society. And we get to see a double standard, which is crazy, because for the affair, people kind of big Vronsky up. They still let Vronsky come into their homes. They're still like, oh, Vronsky, my good friend. But when it's Anna, they're like, oh, this woman, she can't come in this house. She's an adulterer. She cannot come here, which is a complete double standard. And it completely isolates Anna because she has no friends and she's completely shamed away from society. So throughout the entire book, we see the vitality of her character completely die away. She starts out the book with this magnetism where everyone is drawn to her, but it kind of turns against her in a way where everyone is pushed away from her. And we see the tragic demise of Anna. And I'm not gonna lie, some parts of the book, Anna was really an annoying character to me because she makes really irrational decisions, and it's it just annoys me. I'm like, why would you make that decision? But it makes sense in the grander scheme of things because as a character, she is spiraling. She is trapped to Vronsky, who is an awful person, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he's awful. And he has this illusion of love for her, but because Anna has no one to turn to when she's sent from society, the only person she has in her life is Vronsky. And because he's a playboy, he starts out being like, I love you so much. But because he is the only person she has in life, he starts to feel suffocated. And you see their love turn vile and toxic and become something that is despicable to the both of them, but something that they can't get out of. Her because of the shame, and him because I don't know, maybe ego, but it's something that they're both trapped in, but for different reasons, and it's both shameful for different reasons, and it's tragic and sad and awful. And towards the end of the book, regardless of how she might have been annoying at some points because of her decision, you can't help but pity her and feel sorry for her because you see her gradual demise, which is absolutely terrible. So, yeah, that is the main plot and context and themes of Anna Karenina. It's a lot of it I have missed out because the plot is so rich, but this is the main essence of the book. And based off of what I've said, I think I would have to give the book a solid 4 out of 5 stars because it is a truly magnificent love story, and Tolstoy pulls off something in this book which is incredible. It's a work of art. It's a really good story, but I knocked it down half a star just because of those agricultural monologues, which were a bit too much for me. It was 100 pages too much. Besides those 100 pages, this book is amazing, and there's so much characters that I didn't even mention, which adds so much to the plot. And I would definitely recommend you reading it, but not as your main book. Do not go into this book thinking you're going to finish it immediately because you will not. This book took me 4.5 weeks to finish, so pick this book up as a side book or just a side or background project. It is not something you pick up to finish immediately because you will not. This book is it's not slow paced, but it's not fast paced either. It goes at its own pace and it's at its own rhythm, and you just have to work with it and be determined to finish. So, yeah, 4.5 stars. Definitely recommend you to read it, but be warned, there will be some slow parts and take your time. So, yeah, that is all I have to say about Anna Karenina for the day. Please leave down in the comments if you guys have read this book, if you like Vronsky, who's your favorite character. If you haven't read it, please write if you will read it, and just let me know what your overall thoughts on the book are. And be sure to watch on the socials for some of those surprise things that I said will be coming up in the next few weeks. And make sure to listen to some of the other episodes on the podcast. We have so much episodes now. We have a full season from last year that you can listen to while you're waiting on more episodes or content to drop on the socials. But if you don't, just make sure that you tune in for the next episode of ZTalks.